Market commentary for Friday, the 23rd of August, 2019. The end of the week is upon us, and as I've been sort of alluding to all week, it's all eyes on Fed Chairman Powell's speech at the Jackson Hole Symposium. Prior to the said speech, the dollar had gained some strength with euro dropping as low as 110.52. We had Aussie against US down to 67.45. And dollar yen up to a high of 106.73. Sterling against the dollar had dipped down to a low of 121.95, but it held the breakout level, which I alluded to on Thursday, of 121.80, and was back at 122.35 by the US Open. Crypto was, for the most part, unchanged from the end of Thursday. Global equities were generally higher, and Dow Jones futures pointed to a rally of around about 80 points. On the open, that comes the headline, and then comes the headline that China are retaliating in the ongoing trade war by adding tariffs to the degree of another 75 billion of US goods, including automobiles. This sends the Dow Jones futures to an immediate reversal and slip into the red by 150 points. So as the US stocks open up, let the games and the fun begin. Before we get to Powell's speech, we do have some Canadian retail sales data to look at. The core number comes in actually significantly better than expected at plus 0.9%, as opposed to a drop of 0.1%, which the market was expecting. However, with all else going on, the reaction is fairly muted, with dollar CAD dipping from 133.35 down to 133.20. So it's back to clock watching for Mr. Powell, and come off the hour. Chairman Powell pledges to sustain the economic expansion and states there is no rule book for a trade war. The markets like what he's saying, and the Dow Jones briefly climbs back to flat, and the dollar gets sold with euro back up to 110.85. Forget all about the Chinese tariffs and the trade war. The Fed are going to save the day. That's kind of what I take from that, and I'm saying that somewhat tongue in cheek. The market is desperately hanging on his every word, and anything which kind of catches their eye in terms of a rate cut at some point again in the near future seems to have everybody really excited. I think what's been lost here is Fed Powell saying, yeah, we'll keep up the expansion and everything else, but that's kind of reactionary. So if things turn not so good, then they'll step in. Well, they're not really telling us anything we don't already know. We know they'll do that. Okay, so to me, the market had misinterpreted what he was saying. But there you go. That's the market, not me. Crypto also seemed to like it as well. We had Bitcoin squeezing up a couple $100 up to 10,400, and ETH up to a high around 196. But the fun isn't even beginning yet, and all of a sudden the Dow drops over 100 points back to where it was before Powell started speaking, and then back up we go. It's markets all over the place. It really doesn't know what to do. But then it's fair to say the horizon got a little clearer. The tweet that we were not expecting from President Trump, and this is a quote, who is our bigger enemy, Jay Powell or Chairman G? In addition to that, he orders US firms to start looking for alternative markets to China. And then he goes on to say he'll make an unexpected announcement, noting a very strong dollar and a very weak Fed. Seems like an announcement at some point during the US afternoon, and possibly something stronger on China. Maybe there was a lot of speculation as to what he might say. Regardless, stocks immediately crater, and as does the dollar. The euro dollar shooting up, euro against US shooting up to 111.26, dollar yen down to an initial low of 105.60. As the afternoon progresses, it becomes fairly obvious there will be no formal statement from President Trump before he heads off to the G7 summit in France. But the markets are in a state of shock. And cut a long story short, the Dow Jones ended up closing lower by 623 points The Nasdaq fared even worse, at least in percentage terms, down 239 points, or down 3%, and euro against US closes near enough at its highs of the day, 111.40, and dollar yen near its lows, 105.40. We had sterling at 122.50, and Aussie around 0.6750. Quite a day, and as usual, just when you think maybe somebody other than President Trump is going to make the headlines with what they say, he comes screaming over the top, and more than makes up for anything Chairman Powell said. So you can see Mr. Trump is not happy either with Chairman Powell or with the Chinese. So moving on to just a quick technical piece here to end the commentary and end the week. With volatility in US markets we've seen over the past couple of weeks, I've focused on both the Dow Jones and the S&P, and today the tech-heavy Nasdaq is the focus of my attention. Of any of the major US indices, the Nasdaq is probably the most vulnerable to the US trade war with China, and given the very direct comments made on Friday by President Trump, it's not surprised that the Nasdaq took the brunt of the fall in the equity markets. So where does that leave us technically? Well, here's the chart we've got in front of us. It doesn't look that different probably from the charts we've seen before in terms of the Dow Jones and the S&P, maybe a little bit steeper off the lows at the very late 2018, early 2019. We look at this chart here, we can see, similar to the Dow Jones and the S&P, we have a very strong pullback in May, which gives us that very early low in June. Then we have the bounce back up again, and then we start to get the drop off, and then there's this pretty intense volatility over over much of August, to be honest with you. The low in May here is around 69.33. The low over the past couple of weeks is 73.56, which is obviously quite a ways away from the low back in May. But Friday's drop off here really took us within about 100 points of this low we saw earlier in the month. But I think more significantly, and it does depend a little bit how you draw the line. But if you draw this line up from the December low, you can just see us just dropping down through the bottom of that line. Now, I guess you could argue that when we drew this line here, when this low was made, you could have said we kind of dropped below it there. You could say you dropped below it there. It does depend a little bit with how you draw lines, and that's the beauty of technical analysis. But there's definitely a little bit of a break lower there. And obviously with the negativity from Friday, and just I happen to be writing this, there's some ongoing issues, obviously, as we know, in Hong Kong, and those protests seem to be getting ever more violent. And there doesn't seem to be anything out from the G7 meeting. You do rather wonder whether the Nasdaq is going to make some more significant moves lower, not only through this line of this trend line coming up from the beginning of the year, but potentially down through the low we had in early August and beyond. So definitely worth keeping an eye on this. For now, holding, but I think Friday's events shocked the markets. The market was looking for words of wisdom from Mr. Powell, and to be able to build on that, and instead it got words of extreme anger from Mr. Trump, with some fairly obvious consequences. And with that, I hope you all managed to survive the week. I hope you had a good weekend, and we look forward to talking to you at the beginning of next week. Take care. Bye-bye.